Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while. Well, welcome back. Right, welcome back to the Jay and Will Show on the new Glow Sun Sports YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jay.
I'm Will.
Yes, sir. Good to see you, bro. It's been a minute. We had an addition of these, but training camp starting to kick into full effect. We got preseason games coming out here pretty soon, so you will start to see more of us. But yeah, man, doing well. We're gonna actually discuss this particular video, what's been kind of the hot topic of the NFL offseason, which is the COVID protocols, the distinction between protocols for vaccinated players versus non-vaccinated players, and most recently a memo that was sent out by the league regarding potential consequences for teams if breakouts were to take place amongst players or staff that are not vaccinated, how potential implications could, roll down the pike and may affect not only that team, but the other team that they are expected to face financially. Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. So we'll kind of walk through this chronologically, and I'll just kind of go through some stuff, and then I'll kind of obviously want to get your input on some things. The first thing I wanted to touch on was just kind of going over the overall list of restrictions that have been put in place for both vaccinated players and for non-vaccinated players, just to kind of get an idea of the difference between the two. So I'll start with vaccinated and kind of tally back and forth between the two. So starting with vaccinated players will not be required to submit daily COVID testing, whereas unvaccinated players will be tested every day. Vaccinated players will not be required to wear masks at team facilities or during travel, whereas unvaccinated players will have to wear masks at facilities and while traveling. Vaccinated players will not need to quarantine after being exposed to COVID-19, whereas unvaccinated players will need to self-quarantine following exposure. Vaccinated players, no travel restrictions, no limits on movement, whether on the road, traveling to road games, things of that nature. You can do essentially whatever you want. Unvaccinated players will have to remain under the same travel restrictions as 2020, which was can't leave your room, any sort of team activities, you are obviously have to be socially distanced. Depending on the number of folks in the particular activity, you may or may not even be allowed to participate. A lot of different restrictions just based on size of the venue. Remember last year there was folks that were doing walkthroughs in like ballrooms and like certain areas within a hotel because they needed to have that space to be able to do 6 feet apart. All of those restrictions will still be applicable to unvaccinated players, whereas, as I mentioned earlier, vaccinated players will be able to kind of go out and do whatever it is they want to do. Vaccinated players. Weight room activities will be unrestricted for players who are fully vaccinated, whereas unvaccinated players will be required to limit their weight room numbers to 15 individuals. So if there are more than 15 individuals in the weight room, an unvaccinated player is not allowed to be there. So whether they end up working out before everybody else gets there, working out after everybody leaves, they cannot be in the weight room if there are more than 15 people. It says individuals, so not necessarily 15 players. It could be staff in there as well. If there are 15 individuals in that weight room, an unvaccinated player is not allowed to be in the room with them.
Yeah.
So you want to go through all this stuff. Vaccinated players may use team cafeteria with no restrictions. Unvaccinated players must socially distance during meals, not allowed to eat with teammates. Vaccinated players, no limits on social media, marketing, or promotional opportunities, whereas unvaccinated players are not allowed to have social media, marketing, or promotion activities. So no commercials, no ads, none of that. So you're throwing money away.
Yeah.
Vaccinated players may use team steam rooms and saunas as normal. Unvaccinated players are not permitted to use those rooms at all. No, only if there is this amount of people, they're just not allowed to use it, period. Last one here. Vaccinated players may eat with vaccinated family members and friends during team travel, whereas unvaccinated players are required to stay in team hotels for meals, may not eat in restaurants, cannot interact with non-team members during travel. So again, it's just basically copy and paste of what they had to do last year. So obviously, if you're vaccinated, you're essentially free to live life somewhat normally. And we obviously, this is all a caveat. Obviously we know that there's been an uptick because of the Delta variant. So as things stand currently, they will have the ability to essentially go through the process, traveling, working out regularly, attending meetings with no restrictions, not having to wear masks, all these things that were happening prior to COVID-19, whereas the unvaccinated players are restricted the same way they were last year. So reaction to from you, Will, why even go through the process of not being vaccinated? That's just my opinion, but what's your opinion on these restrictions?
I think that it's like just off of the restrictions alone, it would seem that it would be worth getting the vaccination. Just like not looking at them being unsure of the science or anything, just the what you're able to do. So you would think that it will be you're able to do more team activities. You're able to get into the weight room more often to work out. Just being able to camaraderie, being able to spend time with family, just the human interaction will be something pretty big. And so for them to just stand their ground, it's like, nope, nope, not happening, not worth it. It's like, that's, I mean, okay. Because on the other side of that, if you get caught doing that, you're gonna lose a lot of money. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for them, it might not be that much money. If you depending upon your contract, it might
Right.
not be that much money, but I mean, it adds up because they're talking like 14 grand and up. Like it can actually be a starting point at 14 grand and go up from there for violation. Because I know a lot of times the way that the NFL does it, they would start with they could end up starting with the 14 grand and then they just stacks up after that, just
Right.
increase after that. So it's like, oh, this is the hill. I mean, figurative, you know, I'm not even going to finish that saying just because of COVID. So I'm not
Yeah,
even going
yeah,
to
yeah.
finish that saying, but this is the hill though.
Right.
So yeah, I just think I just, I mean, yeah, it's their personal choice. So they don't care about the money. Obviously, they just it's their personal choice. So that's with that is I don't know. It's just it's crazy to me. It's just crazy to me because I got my shot months ago. I think it was like April. I got March or April. I got my shots, and been comfortable with it. I understand like everybody's body is different, but for
Mm-hmm.
me, after the second one, it was just I was tired for a few days. But outside of that, it wasn't too bad. But I just think it was just be worth it, you know. And yeah, that's all I got right now with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just foolish when it comes to just dealing with the protocols themselves. I think that they should the team themselves talk to the players. So if you don't get the shot or these shots, this is what you're dealing with.
Right.
It is written in stone. This is what's going to happen. Okay, you okay with that? All right, and then keep it pushing.
Right. Yeah, it's really weird because obviously people have different reasons as to why they want to do it, but you know it's just I think at the end of the day, to me, it just comes off as being really selfish, man. Like
Yeah.
especially now, like, you kind of have to adjust your wants and, your, desires based on your situation. And, you have to sacrifice for certain things, even though you may not
Mhm.
necessarily agree with it. And I think like for these players, like it's so much more to it than just you in terms of who you're affecting if you decide not to do this. And
Yeah.
if you're just like a regular employee like you or me that just goes into a job and essentially does their job and goes home and doesn't really have a lot of people that impact, at least at work, that's
Mhm.
a different story. But if you look at them, like, dude, you have 8 home games a year, maybe 9, depending on how the schedule goes. Now that we're at 17 games. And then
Yeah.
the other 8 or 9 games you're on the road. So you're potentially going on at least 8 different road trips where you're traveling to different cities and bringing back who knows what to your
Yeah.
family. Not only that, but you're also going to a facility every day where you have dozens of players and even more staff and people that work, in the gift shops and the
Mhm.
cafeterias and all these other places that you don't know how they are protecting themselves. Obviously, based on how the system is set up for the organization, they have to get COVID tested. But you can test COVID, you can test negative for COVID at 901, contract it at 907, and spread it throughout the day. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just because you're negative at one particular point doesn't mean you're going to be negative the next day.
Mhm.
And even we've also seen, like, maybe potentially you and I personally, I've known someone personally who felt like they did everything right as far as like not even leaving the house. And if they did, they,
Yeah.
wiped down everything and, use sanitizer so much their hands were starting to crack and all this other stuff masked up everywhere and they still caught the virus. So you
Yeah.
can be as protected as you want to be, but that doesn't mean that you're going to prevent yourself from catching it. And the fact that the vaccine is not available for people under, is it 12 or 16? Um,
Uh, yeah, it's down to 12 right now.
12, yeah. So you
Yeah.
have kids, a lot of these players have children that aren't able to even get the vaccination that you're
Mhm.
also putting at risk because like I said, the reasons
Yeah.
vary from person to person, but it's
Mhm.
just like ultimately it's not about you at this point. And so the
Yeah.
NFL cannot mandate that you get it because it's not in the CBA.
Yeah.
But they're doing everything else that they can
They
to
can
try and
punish you
point you
though.
in that direction. Yeah, exactly. So with that, I'll transition to the memo that was recently sent out by the NFL, kind of adding more language to potential ramifications for folks that do not get vaccinated. So there's been discussions, and we saw last year a number of games, including one of the Cowboys games against the Ravens. They got moved around because of COVID outbreaks and things of that nature. And so the NFL does still plan to try to maneuver certain games if they can, but they already said that because of the fact that this is the first time in history they're going to have an 18-week season, they
Mhm.
do not plan on having a 19-week season. So what that means is they're going to have to fit the games within the 18 weeks they already have scheduled. So they've now put out language that discusses potential issues that could come about if, for whatever reason, they are unable to move these games around. Now, you have 18 weeks, 17 games, and still just one bye week. So it's still tough to maneuver these things around
Mhm.
because of the fact that now that there is an expanded schedule, but less wiggle room in that schedule, it just makes it more difficult to reschedule these games. So
Yeah.
the memo came out discussing this, and it's got a lot of interesting language in it. So as I mentioned earlier, part of the memo says that we do not anticipate adding a 19th week to accommodate games that cannot be rescheduled within the current 18 weeks of our schedule. One of the other things I mentioned is that vaccinated individuals who test positive for COVID-19 and are asymptomatic can return to duty after 2 negative tests 24 hours apart. Unvaccinated individuals, regardless of whether they're asymptomatic or not, are still subject to a mandatory 10-day isolation period.
That's
10
tough.
days,
10 days.
right? 10 days.
That's two
Um,
games right there, possibly two
yeah,
games.
yeah. Unless the only way you out of that is if your team's gonna buy the following week. Outside of that,
Mhm.
you're looking at 10 days for 2 games more than likely.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of it. Another piece they mentioned is if a club cannot play due to a COVID spike in vaccinated, they
Mhm.
will attempt to minimize the competitive and economic burden on both participating teams. Again, that's if they are vaccinated. If a game cannot be rescheduled within the 18-week schedule and it's canceled due to a COVID outbreak among non-vaccinated players, on one of the competing teams, the club with the outbreak will forfeit the contest and will be deemed to have played only 16 games for purposes of draft, waiver priority, etc. For the purposes of playoff seeding, the forfeiting team will be credited with a loss and the other team will be credited with a win.
We.
That's a big deal
Yeah, it is.
because now it's like, all right, even if regardless, your record will be 16 games as opposed to everybody else being 17. So people think about ties and half
Mhm.
games, all that type of stuff. That's out the window. If it
Yeah.
comes down to it, you have now been considered to have a L that week, and the other team is considered to have a win that week. And that's not even the biggest part. If a game is canceled and cannot be rescheduled within the current 18-week schedule due to COVID outbreak, neither team, neither team's players will receive their weekly paragraph 5 salary, which means nobody gets paid. So if it's a game, Cowboys versus the Eagles, and someone on the Eagles contracts COVID, based on the language of this, which I didn't realize until now, it doesn't matter whether they are vaccinated or not. This says if a game is canceled and cannot be rescheduled within the current 18-week schedule due to COVID outbreak, neither team's players will receive a paycheck.
That's nasty.
So, thoughts on that?
So for me, they at this point it kind of goes with what Michael Irvin was saying. Uh, what 2 weeks ago,
Mm,
that you getting the vaccination will just not looking at it politically. This is all about trying to win, doing whatever it takes to be able to win. And getting the vaccination is at this point is what it would take for you to have the opportunity to win.
right.
Because now look at it. If you end up having the outbreak in the team, you don't necessarily you have a better chance of being on the right side, getting that dub. And especially if you hit what are they trying to hit, the 90%, something like
I
that.
believe it was 90, yeah.
Yeah, so you hit that 90%, boom, you can get that dub. But if you're sitting at 85%, you end up with the L, especially if it's coming from a vaccinated player.
Hmm.
So it's like that's your wins and losses fan. It's been so many times that people, that teams just missed the playoffs off of one game. Like basically
Yep.
every year, it's a
Yep.
team that's missed, especially the last game of the year, either win, lose, boom,
Mm-hmm.
somebody after playoffs, something crazy happening. So you're you're willing to take a chance to miss the playoffs for not getting a vaccination. Like that's what it is at this point. Like for you to have a championship mindset, you're supposed to do whatever it takes to be able to get to the championship. This year is getting that vaccination to be part of you being able to do whatever it takes.
Right.
Players ain't doing it. Too many players aren't doing it.
And now it's like they are basically the NFL is like, hey man, it's not on us no more. It's on whoever that player is. So
Yeah.
they're almost like trying to incentivize other players to put pressure on those unvaccinated players
Yeah.
to be like, look, now my check is on the line because you don't want to get a vaccine. Oh no, nah,
Yeah.
bro, we gotta do something different.
Exactly.
It's
A
just
check is on
crazy.
the line and just the playoff because for some of the teams, remember, for with the when it comes to the NFL, even if you made the playoffs last year, there's not a guarantee that you're going to make it this year.
Absolutely.
Like there's always, I think they say like two teams that will make it this year that didn't make it last year. So
Hell, the team
why
that
would
won the
you
Super
even take
Bowl
a
didn't make
chance?
it. The team that won the Super Bowl didn't make it the year before, or the year
Exactly.
before that, or the year before that. So yeah, it's just like you never know. Like it's so flimsy nowadays to where, to your point, like just because you won the year before doesn't mean anything. And then you look at the NFC East, like there's a new division winner every year. So
Every year.
there's not continuity there to assume that you're going to be able to be there consistently. So it's just, I mean, I've never seen anything like this before. Obviously, we haven't seen anything like this because we haven't been exposed to COVID or this type of a situation where, there's a worldwide pandemic that, essentially kind of dissipated and now it's kind of back for round two, so to speak. And it's just like, I was watching ESPN the other day, and who was it that said it? I want to give him this credit. Dominique Foxworth. We're just saying, like, I don't understand, like, do these players not remember that? Like, he was like, did y'all go to school? Because if y'all went to school, y'all had to get vaccinated to get to school because you had to have records showing that you got the proper vaccinations to be around other kids. So you can't say that you haven't been vaccinated before because you had to in order to go to school. So what's the difference? Like
in sports. You
it's
have to get vaccination for sports too.
Absolutely. So it's like, what's the difference between that and this? And people talking about how, oh, I don't want the government controlling them, all this other stuff. And it's like, bro, like there's just certain things that you have to give up to some degree. Like you talk about the military, how and you obviously would be chief among people who talk about this, how you give up certain liberties, for certain things, and getting something stuck in your arm is like at the bottom of the list of things that you could be sacrificing. You know what I mean, for the greater good. So, obviously,
you lose all those rights in the military because they line you up and hit shots.
You don't get to decide, right? Like
exactly.
That's just part of what it is. And so I think it's just like, like I keep saying everybody's different because everybody's reason is different. So I don't want to put everybody in the same bubble. But I mean, at this point, I don't know what, and this obviously we talked about you being vaccinated. Obviously, I'm vaccinated as well. I just don't know with all this being lined up. And I get it. Like if you don't want to do something, having your employer basically forcing you to do it, I can understand the frustration in that. But that's usually something that just typically affects you, right? Like you don't want to do something even though your employer's making you, but you not doing, whether you do it or not, only affects you necessarily. But in this situation, you have hundreds of people in an organization that you're impacting by not doing something that essentially, from all indications, for the most part, is not harmful. Like you said, you mentioned you were tired. I mean, there's been varying side effects, whether it's soreness or maybe some people get sick for a couple of days, whatever the case may be. But outside of that, there's not a lot of residual effects that take place. So it's just baffling to me still that there are folks who don't, or just more focused on, I'd rather retire than get this shot. And it's just like, you throwing away like millions of dollars because you're being stubborn. Like, it's just amazing to me. And this was talked about, I think on 105 through the fan, how there are players who maybe on the bubble, like around, spot 53 through 58, that they look at and try to figure out whether they want to keep somebody or not. And potentially, right or wrong, whether they're vaccinated could play a role in that, because if you're already on the bubble, that means like there's still room for you to improve and get better. But if we're keeping you on the team, but you can't participate in certain team meetings, you can't participate in certain activities, it's like, why am I keeping you around when there is a margin of error between the 53rd person and 58th person? But if you're person 53, the person 55 is vaccinated versus you not being vaccinated, if the margin of error is that thin, why wouldn't they just pick the other guy? You know what I mean? Like, So it's just one of those things. Obviously, everybody is not Cole Beasley who's set for life. Everybody's not DeAndre Hopkins who's set for life. So there are other folks who are on the bubble,
Yeah,
and there's something as I won't say minor because it's not minor, but something as simple as making that decision to do it could keep you from getting a roster spot or not.
yeah.
Um, I did want to quickly touch on some of the quotes that came out of the response to the memo that I just touched on earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about Cole Beasley. I'm not going to keep talking about him because at this point, he just wants to be talked about, I think, at this point, because none of his stuff makes any sense. Um,
And
DeAndre Hopkins. Okay, go
I
ahead,
was
bro.
just playing. I was just playing about the visor money.
Yeah, exactly. Like somebody calls you out on there, and you're like, actually, that's not. Okay, well, you can shut up now.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just want to hear yourself talk at this point.
Exactly.
So DeAndre Hopkins, obviously, top 3 receiver in the league. I think we both agree with that.
Yeah.
In response to the memo that was put out by the NFL, said, or he tweeted and then deleted, but never thought I would say this, but being put in a position to hurt my team because I don't want to partake in the vaccine is making me question my future in the NFL. Matthew Judon, who is a defensive end for the New England Patriots, just basically tweeted saying the NFL bleeping sucks. Our NFLPA bleeping sucks, which I don't know what the PA is supposed to do in this situation. Like, there's nothing that the NFL is doing that is outside of the agreement.
Well,
So,
the PA does suck because they have a terrible CBA, but this
right,
isn't part of that.
right. Yeah. Like, if
they,
you want to complain
they
about
are
them,
terrible.
yeah, there's
It's
other stuff to complain about.
exactly
This ain't it.
this ain't it. And also, before you continue with the
Yeah.
quotes, can we touch on like we don't have to touch on it, just want to mention it real quick,
Mm-hmm.
how you have like players who are willing to retire over this
Mm-hmm.
shot, especially black players ready to
Mm-hmm.
retire over this shot, but they were quiet about Colin Kaepernick. They wasn't
Yes.
willing to. So when Colin Kaepernick and kneeling for the during the anthem was going on, they had mouths to feed.
Right.
Now it's 2021. I guess those mouths to feed have grown up, so they don't have to worry about feeding them anymore. I mean, I guess they had to have. It's been what 5 years, so they must have been like 13 at the time or something
They
like
got a
that.
job
But
now. They moved
yeah,
out the house. Like,
yeah.
it's
So
not.
they no longer have to worry about them. So maybe that's why they can speak up for this, but not for police brutality. That must be it. Okay, we can
And
continue.
well, and then the wild part of that too is like you would have more support with that than you do with this. Like, you would have people around with you and like be that, kind of hand to hand, like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we're, we can
Right,
stand,
we in it
we have more
together.
like we have more of a leg to stand on in that situation than
Mm-hmm.
we do about this. But to your
Right.
point, you can walk out on your teammates for something like this. But again,
And
it's the same underline, the same undertone, it's selfishness. You
yeah,
don't want to stick your neck out there because you don't want to lose no money.
yeah,
But now you don't want to. Now you're selfish saying, "I want to get this shot, and I'd rather walk away." And it's just like,
yeah.
but nah, fantastic point.
That needs to be our thing.
Yeah. Hey, so what is what we doing?
Exactly. Come
Yeah.
on,
So
man.
I mean, that's it. Like, and then only other quote was Leonard Fournette just saying, "I can't take the vaccine, or I can't do the vaccine." Um,
Yeah.
I just I don't understand it, and I would be interested. Like, I know we talked about previously, like when the vaccines first started getting distributed.
Oh yeah, we were. I mean, we were mad against it too. I know I was. I'm not sure if you were, but when it first was like, yo,
Skeptical.
I'm not, man. If this thing drop in late 2020, I ain't getting it until like 22. So I mean, everybody was a lot of people were saying it, and then once it actually came out, start getting more information about it. Seeing like I got Visor, and it was
Mhm.
like 94, 95% successful. Just to be able to protect you, the vaccine doesn't keep you from getting it.
Golly, can you
It
say that
protects
again,
you.
please?
It doesn't keep you from getting it.
Thank
It
you.
protects you against the severity of it. That's where the success comes, the heavy success part of it is. It's the severity. It brings down the severity of it. That's why they want you to get it because you have a better chance of surviving it. But still, that was my thing. It's like, no, I ain't gonna get it. Tuskegee experiment and everything.
Yeah,
But like they wrote this thing out. It's like, yo, everybody can get it. We're not forcing it on black folk. Everybody
right.
can get it. It's free. It's not just this year that we've been studying it. COVID has been around for a long time. This is
Yeah,
just this particular strain that we're dealing with. It's like, oh,
yeah.
okay, okay. This makes more sense. This makes more sense.
So what you're
Uh,
saying is you did research.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Exactly. So just
Novel,
being
novel
able to
concept.
get a just being able to get the understanding of the research, being able to see, and if people actually willing to get the vaccination, to see like reactions and things like okay, so it's not people really getting too sick from it. It's
Mm,
nothing severe or
mm.
anything like that. It's like okay, go ahead. I did in the military. Go ahead, disarm
Stab
it.
me
Just go
up.
ahead, get it. Yeah, exactly. So, but that's for me though. But I just so as far as the NFL players, like you said, you're affected. There's just so many people that you're affecting because yeah, you have your families, you have the people that you'll be working around. But when you think of the money side of it, so yes, you can
Mm,
end up losing that one game check, but they get paid for the playoff games too. And
mm,
you there's a good chance that you can end up missing the playoffs if you take that L
mm.
for the if it's an unvaccinated player that's expressing. So it's like this is you're willing to take that chance. Like you're going to, you have an opportunity to do something special, and this is where you're going to stand. While the rest of your, a good portion of your team is like, yo, let's do this. We've been banging our heads to, well, while the chance of getting CTE
Right.
for the opportunity for Super Bowl.
Mm,
But because you don't trust the science of the shot, you're not going to get it. You don't. The shot came too quick. You don't trust it. But you're okay with CTE to get a Super Bowl, but not the shot to keep
mm.
to minimize the severity of COVID. It's like make it make sense. Make it
That's
make
the
sense.
thing. That's the thing. You. It makes sense to put your body on the line. It's every day, not every week, but every day,
Yeah,
practice
yeah.
and everything else. But when it comes to this, that's where you draw a line. You put different kind of supplements in your body, to get some kind of competitive advantage. You
Mm-hmm.
do all this other stuff, which those supplements have side effects as well. But you don't
Exactly.
care about that because it can make you, run a 4.4 as opposed to a four
Mm-hmm.
or five or a 4.6. But that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. You can do that. I can risk having kidney issues down the line by continuing to take the supplement that affects my organs down the line in order to get a
Which is
competitive advantage for
FDA
me,
approved.
which is
And the supplements aren't FDA approved because they have so much stuff in it, and the supplements aren't as stringent as this COVID shot. Like the COVID shot is still strict, has the FDA looking over it and is constantly testing it. These supplements the FDA don't care about. It's like,
no,
well, I mean,
you on your own.
just be careful. Exactly, just
Right,
be careful.
exactly. Have a good
And
luck.
so my thing is also this. I think the first people who should have gotten it, just going off of sacrificing their bodies, to me would be the linemen, your D lineman, offensive lineman, because they basically have, let's say that we're Cowboys fans. So let's say that Cowboys run uh, 80 offensive plays, and
Mm,
then 80, the other team runs 80 offensive plays as well. So Zach Martin is going to basically have a accident because he's blocking for 80 plays.
mm,
DeMarcus Lawrence is dealing with an accident for 80 plays, give or take, or probably about 10. It's getting some rest or whatnot. So we say 70 for him. Wouldn't it be good for, if you're dealing with a car wreck for 70 to 80 plays a game for a chance to get your Super Bowl? Why not just take 2 shots?
And then for them too, they're the ones that have the most contact with other players because they're always, like you said, they're in a
Boom,
every
lock
player,
up.
so they're always being pulled, pushed,
Mm-hmm.
face to face,
Yeah.
all this type of stuff. Whereas like a quarterback may not get touched
Mm-hmm.
for the whole play, skill
Exactly.
position player may not even get touched the whole play, but those
Mm-hmm.
guys, for sure, are going to be in contact with someone
In it.
every single play. So,
Exactly.
if you have a non-vaccinated player on the other side of you, let's say you're Zach Martin, you're a guard, and you got a defensive tackle on the other end who refuses to get vaccinated. You're now having that dude in your face, sweat going everywhere. You know how stuff gets when it's a pile
Yep.
and the front will people are poking and spitting
Everybody.
and grabbing and everything. Like,
Yep.
bruh. So
Fair game
yeah,
down there.
it's just exactly. So it's just like to your point, it just does. I don't understand how it makes sense for them, and it's almost like to a point to where I feel like some of them may just be too far into it that they don't want to, that they have their heels
They,
dug in
they
so
can't
far that
stop now.
it's like I've done all this stuff now. I feel like I can't stop because they talk about, oh, if I do this, what else will they make me do? And it's like, bro,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when if since you've been an adult, when is the last time the government said, hey, you gotta go do when you have to go take this shot, you have to go take this pill, you have to go do anything? Like
Yeah.
this is obviously an extenuating circumstance because of a global pandemic. It's not just something that was just here; it was everywhere. And we were fortunate enough to have the technology and the resources to have been able to develop a vaccine at a faster rate because, like you said, there was already basically a skeletal process in place because of previous research and development that was done in prior administrations that they were able to build off of and use as a catalyst to kind of jump the line and start from point C, point G as opposed to point A. So they kind of already were ahead of the game to some degree. So that explains how fast it was able to come out.
And remember, with everything shut down, researchers, the entire world was shut
on
down.
this.
Boom, the whole world was dealing with this. So this is what allows for it to occur much faster when you have basically the greatest researchers that the world has dealing with one issue. And and it's not like they're holding information from each other. Everybody's passing information to be able to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, boom,
like you got excuses.
It's yeah, and that was the whole point of that warp speed was instead of taking forever to get money out, taking forever to for testing. It cut a lot of that down to where, hey, the money's already there. You can go ahead and test when you get to this point. Like that's what sped it up. So it's just I'm just not understanding the issue when it comes to taking it. The sciences behind it, like outside of religion, I can understand the religion, and to me, that's still difficult. If you go with religion because God created humans, so God created the scientists to discover this stuff. So why not take it if, boom, it's a creation of God? But neither here nor there. But it's just, I guess, on the sports side of it, I think that you are. I think that the players are putting too much, taking too much of a risk to hurt the team and the chances of winning the championship by not taking a shot.
Yeah, I think that pretty much puts a bow on it. I'll just say, like you said, man, like earlier, if this is the hill you pick, this is the worst hill to pick. I'm just saying, like
exactly.
There are more appropriate hills, and this one is not it. To your point, I think the only, like you said, the only one that we can look at and consider being somewhat reasonable or understanding is religious reasons, and that even like you said, that's like I don't know, like I just think, man, this profession is so different than the normal one that it's like your liberties are not the same as other people, and because of that, you get paid millions of dollars a year. Yeah. So if it was in the same boat as you or I, it would be $1,000 a year. But because of certain things, in order for you to access that and be able to enjoy a lifestyle that you're accustomed to having, you got to give us some stuff. You know, nothing like there's no such thing as a free lunch. And again, this is not something that is exclusive to you guys. It's around the world. Everybody's doing this. So it is what it is, man. Sometimes you got to pay the price to do a business. And again, this is really for your benefit, by the way. Like, not like, you know, they're intentionally trying to harm you and put you in a position where you're having to do something that could potentially be detrimental to you or your family. This is really like, hey, we gave you the opportunity to do it on your own because we assume that you're smart enough to understand how much this is going to help you. Now that you can't be trusted as an adult, we're going to have to adult you. We're going to have to adult you. Or you're going to have to be in timeout with all the other kids that they get vaccinated and sit in your hotel room by yourself for 8 weeks out of the year and not be able to do anything. That alone, me would be like, all right, I'm getting stuck.
All right. So where can I send it at?
Exactly. All right, guys. Well, that is going to do it for this edition of the Jay and Will Show. As we mentioned earlier, yes, sir. You'll see a lot more of us just based on the fact that it's sports season, NFL season. You know, we'll probably talk some Olympics here and there as well. Shout out Luka tonight. I got to stay and watch that.
Okay. I'm going to try to get a power nap in for that.
Yeah, me too.
I've been up since 5, so I'm going to need a good power nap.
Man, I quick off top, I looked up for that USA game out, so man, I should stay asleep. But that's going to do it for us, guys. As always, please like and subscribe to the Glow Sun Sports Network. We also have the Glow Sun Geek Network and the For Your Ambition Network as well. Please make sure to subscribe to all 3 channels. We'll be continuing to provide content on all 3 of those platforms, so please make sure to support us there. If you have any comments, and particularly, I'll say this, if there's anybody watching this that is anti-vax or, you know, wants to express why they feel a certain way about it, I would love to hear from you guys just to kind of get a different perspective. So please, if you disagree with what we have to say, feel free to leave a comment respectfully. And
we'll respect that. We'll respond and be respectful.
I would just love to hear from that perspective because it's hard for me to see it from my end. And if there's someone else that has another perspective, I'm definitely open to hearing it and just kind of continue that dialogue as well. So please feel free to comment on that as well. With that said, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Jay.
I'm Will.
And we are out. Appreciate you guys.